As my heir, William now assumes the Scottish titles which have meant so much to me. He succeeds me as Duke of Cornwall.
What could bring a future king to tears? Just before stepping back from the spotlight, King Charles shared a final, unexpected wish with Prince William. A message so personal, so raw, it shook him to his core. Was it a royal regret? A plea for healing? Or something far more emotional than anyone imagined?
This statistic alone is reason enough for why the international community must work together for an end to the use of these weapons.
This wasn't a formal decree. It was a father reaching out to his son in a moment of rare vulnerability. What did Charles reveal? And why did it change everything? Charles, Queen Elizabeth II's eldest son, formally succeeded his mother as king on September 8, 2022. While the entire nation and a large portion of the world lamented her passing, it also signaled the start of a new era in royal history. Charles had been waiting for the throne for more than 59 years, longer than any other heir in British history. He was also the oldest monarch to begin the position at 73. But with age came wisdom, composure, and a methodical approach to tasks. Charles made his first public appearance as king just one day after the Queen's passing. He spoke passionately and respectfully about his mother. In addition, Charles made it apparent that his son William would now be the new Prince of Wales and offered a sneak peek at what he planned to contribute to the position. It was a straightforward moment, but it revealed a lot about Charles's mindset because he was already considering the monarchy's future. The Accession Council, a significant formal gathering, was broadcast on television for the first time the next day. It was at this point that Charles was crowned king. Queen Camila, Prince William, Prime Minister Liz Truss, and all 6 of the former prime ministers who are still alive attended the ceremony. Not only that, but announcements were heard not only in the UK but also in Canada, Australia, and a number of Caribbean and Pacific nations that are still connected to the crown. Charles and Camilla's coronation at Westminster Abbey on May 6, 2023, marked the culmination of months of meticulous preparation. Operating under the code name Operation Golden Orb, the entire event had been planned for years. Charles desired a more modest and significant coronation, one that represented modern-day Britain and its diverse range of cultures and beliefs, as opposed to Queen Elizabeth's grand and extravagant coronation in 1953. Nevertheless, the event maintained its strong traditional foundation. After receiving the crown and other regal adornments, Charles was anointed with holy oil and swore the solemn coronation oath. Charles received the Scottish crown jewels, also known as the Honours of Scotland, in Edinburgh in July, marking yet another momentous occasion. It was a moment of pride that gave his rule a new dimension. Charles demonstrated that he was prepared to make a significant change during his first year as king. He proposed in July 2023 that the public should benefit from offshore wind plant revenues rather than the royal family. By doing this, the royal family would only get 12% of the crown estate's earnings, prioritizing justice and openness over custom. Charles extended a warm welcome to foreign leaders as well. He welcomed South African President Cyril Ramaphosa for his first formal state visit in November 2022. Charles became the first British monarch to address the Bundestag when he and Queen Camilla visited Germany the following year. He delivered another momentous address later that year, this time before the Senate Chamber of France. Additionally, he publicly discussed the negative aspects of British colonial rule when in Kenya, acknowledging the suffering it caused, even though he made no official apology. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak requested in May 2024 that Charles postpone royal obligations in order to ensure a distraction-free general election. Additionally, the King and Queen traveled to Normandy in June to participate in a heartfelt ceremony commemorating the 80th anniversary of D-Day. As part of a formal visit, Japanese Emperor Naruhito visited the UK in June. Shortly thereafter, Keir Starmer became the new leader of the Labour Party, which won the July general election. While in Scotland for Hollywood Week, Charles abruptly ended the trip to return home and formally named Starmer Prime Minister. He managed the situation with poise, composure, and a strong sense of responsibility as usual. By October 2024, Charles and Camilla were traveling once more, this time to Samoa and Australia. Australia was the first Commonwealth country Charles visited as king, so it was a significant occasion. He went to the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Samoa. Regretfully, things didn't work out exactly as expected. Charles's cancer treatment forced the vacation to be shortened, and he was unable to travel to New Zealand. To demonstrate how seriously he takes his royal duties, he nevertheless put a halt to his treatment in order to attend the tour. Charles and Camilla celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary in April 2025. They visited the Vatican as part of their anniversary trip to Italy, and they had a heartwarming encounter with Pope Francis there. Despite being ill and recuperating at home at the time, the Pope welcomed the royal couple. It was an emotional meeting, made even more so by the tragic death of Pope Francis a few days later. Another significant event is coming up in May 2025. In order to inaugurate a new session of Parliament, Charles is traveling to Canada. Although it may not seem significant, this will be the first time a Canadian king has performed this act in person since 1977. It's a significant turning point, and another evidence of how Charles has molded his rule with taciturn strength, considerate actions, and steadfast leadership. But despite all of his public responsibilities, he was still troubled by something. He couldn't completely get rid of the emptiness. Perhaps that's why he eventually confided in his son William and shared a last, sincere request. What is at the core of their relationship? Could it be something other than royal duties? Although it may seem like a dream come true, Prince William's early years weren't always easy. There were difficult relationships, family strife, and terrible times inside those imposing gates. His father, Charles, and Camilla were at the center of it all. They would have a significant impact on how the family developed in the future. William witnessed the gradual disintegration of his parents' marriage as a young child. It was about loss, unfulfilled expectations, and the burden of being in the spotlight, not just about royal responsibilities. Princess Diana, his mother, was adored for being warm, compassionate, and grounded. Diana, however, was in anguish away from the cameras, and William noticed it. Camilla Parker Bowles was the one who made it worse for him. Charles seemed to value her more and more, but Diana's grief only seemed to grow as a result of her presence. Those close to the family knew that William struggled with it, even though he didn't openly express it. He was obviously uncomfortable with Camilla's role in their life and struggled to accept her. He saw Camilla as a symbol of the suffering and errors of the past, and he found it hard to move on because of her connection to his mother's discontent. Tension developed between William and his father as a result of this complex emotional entanglement. William felt as though every stride Charles took ahead only served to distance them from one another, even as he attempted to flip the page. He was plagued by the sense that his family was disappearing. Then came August 31st, 1997, the day that would change everything. The world was shocked to learn that Princess Diana had perished in a Parisian car accident. At the time, William was just 15 years old. Not only was he losing his mother, but he was also losing the one who provided him with love and support when everything else seemed unclear. Something unexpected occurred during that intense period of grieving. Charles, who was generally perceived as calm and aloof, revealed a side of himself that the general public hardly ever saw. He decided to fly to Paris and personally transport Diana's body back to London, which was a very personal decision. It was a silent gesture that conveyed a lot of meaning. It was about love, respect, and taking care of his sons, not just following the rules. It was one of the few occasions when William and Harry saw their father as a broken man, trying to keep his family together, rather than as the prince or future king. Charles obviously tried to be more emotionally available when Diana passed away. He wanted to be a good father, not merely a regal presence in their lives. He made an effort to support them in a more genuine and humane manner, even though it wasn't always simple. Charles started doing the small things that were important, like walking his sons, having appropriate conversations, and making time for them despite his hectic schedule. But despite all that, there was still a silent gap. An imperceptible barrier had been created between them by years of royal responsibilities, past injuries, and unspoken words. The problem is that Charles and William expressed their emotions in rather different ways. Emotions were suppressed during Charles's upbringing, particularly in royal circles. It was simply not socially acceptable to discuss feelings. However, William, who was influenced by his mother's warmth and candor, desired emotional intimacy over custom. Despite their constant affection, they frequently misinterpreted one another because of this discrepancy. Nevertheless, their bond endured despite the small things. William would frequently reminisce about his early years, including the times he and his father went on walks and observed birds or the stars, or the times his father read bedtime stories and made up hilarious voices for all the characters. These were the minor but significant recollections that helped him normalize his strange upbringing. The burden of being king only increased with Charles's age. There was little time for introspection because the obligations kept mounting. But when he began to consider what he would be leaving behind, he came to the important realization that being a father was more important than wearing a crown. Something changed when William became a father himself. He began to see things from his father's perspective, which was the strain of bearing the expectations of a whole nation while simultaneously safeguarding your children. The wall of ice between them melted slowly but steadily, via calm comprehension, not via eloquent speeches. Healing takes time, so their journey hasn't been flawless. There is a very real story involving two men behind all the royal rituals and staged pictures. Although one is currently wearing the crown and the other will in the future, they are just Charles and William in their personal lives. A father and son who are still growing, learning, and clinging to an unwavering love, even in quiet. But Charles was carrying more than just emotional burden. His health was another burden that came with the crown. King Charles III's cancer diagnosis in 2024 dealt a severe shock to the royal household. The public was taken aback. During Queen Elizabeth's protracted reign, people were only beginning to acclimate to life under King Charles. After waiting longer than anybody else in British history to become king, he was now 76 years old and battling a personal battle as he attempted to adapt to his new position. Shortly later, Princess Catherine, the Princess of Wales, made another devastating announcement. She too was battling cancer. The news was devastating. With a young brood of her own, Catherine was a comforting presence and a modern-day rock for the royal family. She naturally took a break from the spotlight to concentrate on her health after having 3 children and assuming a more prominent role in society. Without her soothing presence, the royal family's public image suffered and her absence was greatly felt. With both Charles and Catherine taking a back seat, someone had to shoulder the burden of royal responsibilities. Queen Camila and Princess Anne stepped up to the plate. Despite her reputation as the family's hardest worker, Anne somehow found a way to take on even more. Once criticized, Queen Camila turned out to be a pillar of support amid the crisis. She was no longer viewed as a contentious figure, but rather as an important one, as a result of her support for Charles and her new position within the monarchy. At the same time, Prince William was juggling more than before. He had 3 small children to care for, a wife undergoing treatment, and a mountain of royal responsibilities. According to those close to the family, he was being severely affected by the stress. Rumors began to circulate regarding potential adjustments to the royal lineup, suggesting that a significant change would occur soon. Charles made an effort to maintain his privacy throughout. Despite undergoing painful treatments, he continued to report for duty at Buckingham Palace. According to insiders, the need for relaxation times was growing and hospital visits were becoming more regular. However, Charles first opposed taking time off since he believed it to be a sign of weakness. But it was alarming to his employees. His inability to slow down turned into a problem in and of itself. Charles eventually realized that taking time to recover was a show of strength rather than weakness. Despite his doctor's advice to reduce his public engagements, he remained adamant about continuing to perform the essential aspects of his profession. He persisted in meeting with ambassadors and prime ministers, signing important documents, and reading through official files to stay up to date on government issues, even on his worst days. He was dedicated to the character he had spent a lifetime waiting to play, no matter what. However, many who knew the king well saw times when his public persona faltered, just a little. On certain days, his regal posture was softened by weariness, and he appeared worn down from therapy. According to one insider, Charles appeared exhausted, more like a weary grandfather than a king after a particularly trying week. Even so, despite his obvious uneasiness, he arrived for a formal diplomatic occasion poised and cool. In the background, Queen Camila subtly changed her own schedule to accompany him on hospital stays, providing consolation during a period when more than titles were required. The king would occasionally discuss his concerns during these private meetings, ranging from his personal health to the future of the monarchy as a whole. Once symbolic, the weight of the crown was starting to feel quite real. Additionally, Prince William started to gain more attention while Charles fought illness. People started paying more attention to William as the king became less visible. It wasn't only that he was next in line, it was also how he handled the increasing duties and conducted himself. He already seemed and behaved like a king, according to many. Insiders verified that William was absorbing more and more behind the palace walls. He began to chair meetings, attend important official events, and represent the monarchy both domestically and internationally. He became more powerful and commanding. He was taking the lead, not merely filling in. His co-workers praised him for being transparent in his approach to problems, considerate in his choices, and composed under duress. William made it a point to establish a rapport with common people because he was well aware of how public opinion influenced the monarchy. He made sure the royal family didn't feel so remote by going to local areas and hearing what they valued. Employees at the palace saw that William was adding new vitality. Although he honored the customs, he didn't hesitate to incorporate a contemporary element. He took up Charles's long-standing responsibilities of planning significant royal events, charitable endeavors, and official travel, and he carried himself with peaceful assurance. The public paid attention. William was no longer merely viewed as the future monarch or the obedient son. He was considered a leader unto himself. Around the palace, reporters remarked on his apparent confidence and how he was obviously getting ready for what was about to happen. Despite not having formally assumed the throne, sources verified that William had begun to meet with important political people and get official briefings. In public, William and Catherine provided the country with an image of strength and solidarity, while in private he was managing more royal family decisions. William and Catherine managed to maintain a healthy balance between being committed to their careers and constantly shielding their kids from the spotlight. People found hope in their cooperation, poise, and calm presence in the midst of such chaos. While William's contemporary attitude indicated he was prepared to lead in his own manner, his composed leadership style served as a reminder of his grandmother's strength. The future of the monarchy was already being shaped by William's deeds, even if King Charles was still in power. His decisions were significant, his voice was powerful, and his expanding role was unavoidable. People started to wonder if Charles's decision to disclose something very intimate with his kid was influenced by this early shift of responsibility. Watch closely because what follows might be a father's last request. Something very personal occurred in a private chamber away from the cameras, the media, and the formalities of royal life. Something that fundamentally altered the relationship between King Charles and Prince William. There was only a tender, sincere moment between a father and his son. No formal witnesses or dramatic announcements. For the two guys, it was more potent than any public celebration, even though it might never be recorded in history books. That day, there was no rigidity or overabundance of ritual. It was warm, like a mild afternoon when everything seems to slow down. William walked into the room with the poise that had been developed over years of practice. Despite all of his royal upbringing, he wasn't fully prepared for what was going to happen. King Charles, his father, sat waiting with the peaceful patience of a man prepared to speak from the heart rather than the air of a ruler. There was no majestic pose, no crown, just a soft smile filled with recollections. Charles stretched out and took William's hand as he sat down. It was straightforward but more powerful than any formal statement. He wasn't a monarch clutching a prince's hand at that moment. Just like he had done when William was a child, when bedtime stories were more important than politics, he was a father clinging to his kid. It was not a speech that came next. Like water conveying decades worth of emotions, it was a stream of kind, straightforward remarks. Charles started to remember the thrill, the excitement, the overwhelming sense of astonishment on the day William was born. He told modest tales of occasions that were cherished in his heart, but would have seemed insignificant to others. For example, when Charles hurried to console William after he fell off his bike, or when the young prince stood next to him wearing a little suit and made a valiant effort to be courageous in front of photographers. Charles relayed each recollection with warmth, occasionally shedding a tear or a quiet laugh that he didn't try to suppress. Then the topic of conversation changed. Charles paused, looked straight at William, and spoke with even more feeling, still tender, but now profoundly meaningful. He was no longer only recalling. He was confessing from the bottom of his heart a desire that had slowly developed within him over the years. He talked about love, not about titles, responsibilities, or outward appearances. He gently urged his son to not make the same mistakes that he had, making the mistake of putting duty ahead of family. He acknowledged that there had been occasions when he had preferred formality over genuine connection and tradition over togetherness. He believed it was required of him, not because he was unconcerned. He wished for his kid to have a better future as he looked into William's eyes. He desired for him to achieve equilibrium, to be a happy human being as well as a monarch, a devoted husband, a father in the present, a loyal brother. Charles reminded him that creating an example of compassion and kindness was more important than following rules and regulations when it came to managing a country. He provided neither a royal guidebook nor a checklist. He urged William to lead with love instead, to be the type of father who embraces, tells goodnight stories in an outrageous voice, and shows up, not only for royal responsibilities, but also for school performances, knee scrapes, and quiet times. He mentioned Harry too. There has always been friction between the brothers, but they left resentment behind that day. When the timing was perfect, Charles urged William to make room in his heart for reconciliation. He did it because brotherly love deserved a second shot, not because it was expected of him. William sat in profound emotion. The laws of royalty had governed every aspect of his life, but his father showed him another path in that silent moment, one led by connection rather than by crowns and rituals. For the first time, William genuinely understood what success could entail, not merely ruling a kingdom, but establishing a household where love permeated daily life, in morning strolls, cozy embraces, family dinners, and giving one's all for those who matter most. As soon as the room became quiet once more, the feelings began to envelop them like a cozy, comfortable blanket. William's eyes glistened, not with sorrow, but with a profound comprehension that had recently begun to take hold. He no longer regarded his father as the king he had always admired in that calm moment. He saw a flawed, intelligent, loving man who had lived, had learnt, and now wanted only to provide support rather than commands. There were no cameras present to record the event. It wasn't publicized or featured in the media, but to William, it was far more significant than any royal engagement could ever be. He would never forget this silent discussion. Perhaps love, rather than laws or monuments, is the greatest legacy King Charles could leave behind. William didn't feel burdened by responsibility as he left the room. Rather, he sensed a softer force, a promise from the heart, and a strength based on compassion. His father had wanted him to have a good life, love profoundly, and experience life to the fullest. William wondered how that might affect his performance of his royal duties. Neither he nor anyone else anticipated Prince William's response. He had gone into that room expecting nothing more than a standard conversation with his father. What actually happened, however, was very different. Charles's sincere last request was not cloaked in royal etiquette. Rather, it was an honest, unvarnished exchange between a father and son, and it gave William a severe shake. The surge of feelings he was experiencing caused him to remain still in his chair. Even though there was silence all around him, he felt as though a storm had broken out inside of him. Slowly, but surely, like a dam finally bursting, the tears started to flow. Something in his heart, which he hardly ever allowed others to access, had been penetrated by his father's remarks. William didn't see a man strolling through hallways that had been there for millennia or wearing a crown at that precise moment. He saw the person who, particularly after Diana's death, had silently kept their family together during their worst moments. Charles had stayed steady while the rest of the world grieved, quietly but always. He was now presenting William with something very intimate, a tender transfer of leadership, love, and the unseen weights that accompanied them. It brought back memories of lengthy walks and silent discussions with his father about life, responsibilities, and what really matters. Even though he had always known that he would one day rule as king, this was the first time he had ever felt the full emotional burden of that position. Politics and tradition were no longer the only factors. The genuine essence of leadership, love, selflessness, and interpersonal relationships had been symbolically transmitted by his father. William said, his voice hardly firm, that he would not disappoint his father. It was a silent commitment out of genuine passion rather than a big public vow. Serving the kingdom was only one aspect of that pledge. Another was defending the people and principles his father cherished, particularly his family. Something has changed in William since that day. Although he is still regarded as the monarch of the future, his sense of purpose has grown. He presents himself more carefully at public gatherings. He takes Prince George to events like the FA Cup final, not just for show, but to make memories that are similar to the ones his father made with him. Even though he has assumed more responsibility within the royal family, his heart always goes home. He makes sure to be a loving, present parent in accordance with his father's last request. He quietly upholds that pledge every time he holds his kids' hands or smiles at them in public. A man who carries the aspirations of a country and the unwavering love of a parent is hidden behind the royal walls. Prince William's tenacity stems not only from his royal background, but also from the emotional fortitude molded by love, loss, and the ties that make him a parent, a son, and now a leader. Prince William and King Charles had a profound and enduring influence from that private event, which quietly changed William's daily demeanor. It altered the way he treats his kids, maintains his relationship with Catherine, and strikes a balance with his royal responsibilities. He discovered from that one exchange that showing your feelings, even if it means crying a little when your heart is full, is more powerful than keeping quiet. William has a stronger feeling of purpose now. It is motivated by a desire to be the kind of devoted, caring parent his own father had become, not by the crown or the throne. He is aware that others are continually watching him, but more significantly, he is aware that his kids are keeping an even closer eye on him. And he wants to be someone people can rely on, someone who sets an example, listens, and loves. King Charles's last request started out as a confidential rumor that was discussed behind closed doors in the palace. Initially, only a few people were aware. The tale eventually got out, though, and when it did, it touched everyone who heard it. What began as a private father-son farewell turned into something more, something that touched the hearts of everyone close to the king. This was a straightforward private moment in contrast to the stately speeches and lavish events that occupied history books. No golden seats, no regal trumpets, just a father's gentle voice conveying a hope rather than an order. King Charles wanted his son to wear the crown with love, not only to wear it, to lead with compassion and gentleness in addition to power and wisdom. Those in the vicinity were profoundly affected by such amicable interaction. Everybody responded differently. Some were moved by the beauty of the scene and accepted its emotional weight. Others were silently astounded to see this more tender, sensitive side of Charles, a side molded by affection and memories rather than custom and routine. Some people started to consider what this shift in tone may indicate for the future of the monarchy, what difficulties or adjustments might be in store. Queen Camila, who had been Charles's constant companion for a long time, stood silently close by, realizing the seriousness of the situation. She had witnessed Charles assume enormous responsibility over the years. She was seeing a different guy today, though, one who desired his legacy to be based on family and love, rather than merely on duty and formality. Even Prince Harry eventually heard what his father had to say, despite their emotional and physical separation. And they roused something inside of him that he hadn't anticipated. They evoked memories of a bygone era of quiet conversations, shared meals, and laughter. The message wasn't solely about legacy for Harry. It served as a brief but potent reminder of his origins, and the fact that love remained a part of their family despite the distance and the news. Though they kept their feelings to themselves, Princess Anne and Prince Edward, Charles's lifelong friends and confidants, were profoundly touched. They didn't consider the king's message to be merely royal custom, having accompanied Charles through innumerable public appearances and private challenges. They interpreted it as a promise, a sincere appeal for harmony, love, and reconciliation. They realized that their brother was attempting to leave behind something more significant than titles or regulations. He wished to be known as a man who cherished his family. The significance of this unique occasion was felt even by the palace employees, who had worked behind the scenes and in ceremonies for decades. This milestone felt personal, even though they had witnessed many official ones. It has nothing to do with pageantry. It was about a parent transferring a feeling of love and humanity, which is more valuable than power. Many claim to have never seen anything like it. The king's last request started to softly reverberate around the royal residence's hallways in the days and weeks that followed. There was only a silent, sincere story told from one person to another. No clamorous declarations or formal declarations. It also brought about a subtle change in how people perceived each other. They were no longer merely dignitaries, royals, or employees. They had feelings, concern, and compassion because they were human. Individuals who relied on and liked one another. A new kind of legacy was subtly establishing itself in that way. More than a simple farewell, King Charles's words were emotional and conveyed a message that went much beyond a regal proclamation. It was based on a straightforward yet profound truth. Love is the most important thing. That desire exposed an aspect of the monarchy that the general public seldom sees. Royals have historically been perceived as aloof, encircled by diamonds, governed by formality, and constrained by long-standing traditions. However, the image changed during that silent exchange between a father and his son. It served as a reminder that people who wear crowns nevertheless require intimacy, solace, and the warmth of real connections. It served as a strong wake-up call. Despite their wealth and prestige, even kings and queens yearn for love, family, and tranquility. This exchange revealed something more universal, a parent-child bond, by removing the trappings of formality and grandeur. And that friendship meant the world to Prince William. His father's wish didn't seem like a burden to him. He regarded it as a gift that should be treasured. William believed that he understood the job of king, having been schooled and prepared for it since childhood. However, nothing could teach him what he discovered then. Love is the foundation of true leadership. The way forward was reshaped by his father's last request. Tradition and strength weren't the only factors. It was about showing his own children how to live compassionate lives, mending broken connections, especially with his brother, and being gentle when necessary. In the end, this narrative is about family. Fundamentally, it is about a father and son's fantasy of a royal family that feels more like a household than an institution, not about crowns or thrones. Together, they envisioned a time when their family would be able to accept one another, welcome change, and stay together. Prince William was aware of the word's greater significance. It was about changing the attitude behind the regulations, not about changing the rules themselves. A fresh strategy emphasizing open-hearted leadership, forgiveness, and honesty. The world's perception of the monarchy might be subtly altered if William decides to carry out this agenda. As a family that changes with the times, one that learns, develops, and leads with love, rather than as remote overlords. Not all of his grandchildren were to inherit titles, according to King Charles. He wanted them to understand the importance of compassion over status, the superiority of listening over commanding, and the superiority of love over the appearance of dominance. He wished that William and Catherine would uphold these principles going forward and create a royal family that accurately represents the people they are meant to represent. The narrative was unexpectedly comforting to those who heard it. However, how has Prince William fulfilled that expectation? Does he possess the qualities his father wanted in a leader? William's silent pledge to effect change was demonstrated by his consistent, earnest deeds rather than by speeches or fireworks. He knew at a young age that being a king was more than just wearing medals and waving at audiences. Being the eldest child of King Charles and the late Princess Diana, he was aware that responsibility extended beyond outward appearances. He therefore took it seriously because it was important, not just for show. He never sought attention or portrayed himself as a perfect person. Rather, his closest friends and family portray him as a man who listens more than he talks. A man who thinks that constant compassion, rather than grand gestures, is what truly brings about change. William has dedicated his adult life to causes that are close to his heart, including animal protection, homelessness, mental health, and the environment. He believes that royal privilege should be used to support and uplift those in need rather than as a badge of honor. Homelessness has always been one of the subjects that William cares about the most. That worry began in his early years rather than as an adult. His public work became one of his most enduring objectives because he brought that same empathy to it. He spent time visiting shelters and listening to homeless people long before he was given royal titles. Face to face, person to person, rather than from behind a podium. His commitment to Centerpoint, an organization that helps young people who are homeless, demonstrates how much he cares. He did more than just cut ribbons. He prepared meals, worked nights, and took the time to learn about the actual struggles individuals face. His sincere concern was evident to anyone who saw him during these visits. There was no photo opportunity for William. He was there to connect, to learn, to comprehend. And that was the decisive factor. He frequently reminds people that anyone may become homeless. It's not simply something that occurs to other people. His objective is to increase awareness, elicit empathy, and make the issue something that people feel deeply rather than merely read about in the news. In this sense, Prince William has already started to fulfill his father's wish, not with loud proclamations, but with a quiet mission, unwavering empathy, and a sincere faith in the transformational power of love. Particularly in recent years, Prince William has emerged as one of the most well-known and fervent advocates for mental health awareness. He co-founded the Heads Together campaign with his wife Catherine, which aims to dispel the stigma associated with mental health issues. It is still expected of many people, particularly men, to stay strong and suppress their feelings. By promoting candid discussions about anxiety, sadness, and emotional health and facilitating the process of seeking assistance, this campaign aimed to dispel that antiquated way of thinking. William, however, did more than just spread awareness. Enhancing mental health treatment necessitates a real change in cultural values, he and his team stressed, and it goes beyond money or publicity. They emphasized how important it is to create a culture that values mental health and views seeking assistance as a strength rather than a weakness. William showed a strong commitment to the cause and a willingness to bring about long-lasting change by spearheading efforts to get free mental health resources, training for frontline staff, and focused support for youth. His empathy is not limited to people, it also encompasses the environment. Nature has always held a special place in Prince William's heart. He developed a strong connection with nature as a child by spending hours exploring the outdoors. Eventually, this enthusiasm led him to establish the Earthshot Prize in 2020, a bold worldwide program designed to identify and honor innovative answers to the planet's most urgent environmental problems. William's project brought together communities, scientists, and innovators from around the world to address challenges including sustainable living, ocean conservation, and air pollution. According to his team, the Earthshot Prize is about hope as much as it is about creativity. It demonstrates that genuine development is achievable when individuals collaborate, especially for younger generations. In this endeavor, William's leadership style is evident. It emphasizes motivating others, encouraging teamwork, and concentrating on realistic, forward-thinking action. One of William's main priorities has also been wildlife conservation. He has played a significant role in combating the illicit trafficking of endangered species in his capacity as President of United for Wildlife. Instead of only talking about the problem, he took concrete steps to undermine the criminal networks responsible for wildlife crimes by collaborating closely with law enforcement, financial institutions, and digital businesses. His strategy demonstrated a profound awareness that safeguarding wildlife involves more than just saving individual creatures. It also entails preserving ecosystems, sustaining biodiversity, and ensuring a healthy Earth for coming generations. Although his extensive endeavors get notice, William also appreciates the more intimate, quiet aspects of service. He frequently goes to schools, military installations, and children's hospitals, places where his presence truly has an effect. He is frequently characterized as personable and genuinely compassionate. He is the type of guy that takes the time to console, listens intently, and poses meaningful questions. He thinks that sincere actions, no matter how tiny, have the power to transform someone's life. He and Catherine also established the Royal Foundation, a non-profit organization focused on long-term effects rather than immediate fame. William's preference for quiet work is frequently mentioned by those who have worked with him. Because he wants the attention to be on the work and not on him, he frequently visits charity without the media present. This isn't because he wants to avoid the spotlight. His constant objectives are to gain knowledge, offer assistance, and establish sincere connections. His recall of names, updates, and conversations frequently surprises those working on these causes. It demonstrates a genuineness that distinguishes him. Prince William has established a reputation as someone who truly wants to change the world, in addition to being a future ruler through his public and private deeds. A man who is concerned about the environment, people, and his legacy. This leads us back to the last request made by King Charles. Do you believe Prince William is capable of realizing his sincere wish? Will he be the type of leader who reconciles duty and love, tradition and compassion? Comment below with your opinions, and remember to like, share, and subscribe if this story touched you. Don't forget to watch the following video that appears on the screen before you leave.